Hello, everyone. Happy summertime. FRI is upon us, and I'm so excited to be here alongside Rebecca Allen, AI leadership strategist from Pardalis. Pardalis? Did I say it
Dollars.
incorrectly?
Pardon.
Pardalis. Pardalis. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm quite well. Where are you located today in the world?
Today, I'm in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Georgia.
Wonderful. How long you there for?
I'm just another week, and then I'm back to London for a little while, and then I'm back over in the States, partly for the FRA conference and some other gigs.
You're just hopping back and forth between the pond.
Yeah, my carbon footprint's not great with it, but
We appreciate your leadership on all things AI, particularly how we're bridging this within the fire service. And after our initial call, I did some research. I know you had a range of work within different organizations and you had worked your way up in the C-suite, but you've now kind of evolved into this niche of AI strategy advice. What was your sort of like aha moment where you're like, AI and leadership is something that is A, striking your interest, and B, something that really needed a bit more attention?
yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, when people first discover AI, it's often finding some kind of there's a little bit of an aha moment from everyone, right? There's a productivity hack. I can write something really, really quickly, and you can the speed at which you can do stuff with AI kind of bowls people over. But then you can kind of get stuck in this kind of random experimentation, going down rabbit holes. And whilst there are lots of tactical kind of speedy things you can do when crunching through data or creating content or repurposing content or conducting research, I guess the biggest aha moment for me came to when I realized that actually AI can be a really smart strategic assistant for leaders. So you're using it, you're going beyond tactics and you're actually able to interact with it, teach it over time, and train it to be able to really help you in your day to day tasks, but also your strategic planning and so many aspects of leadership. So I've really kind of focused on developing that aspect of AI, which it just creates far more value that way. So you're going beyond just kind of productivity hacks, but you're looking at really elevating how you work as a leader.
And if you could turn back the time 20 years or 30 hour when you started running your way up some different C-suite boards and just working in the corporate world, where do you wish or where do you think that some of this AI tools as an assistant could have helped you? And maybe even kind of if you could kind of paint in layman's term, like what does that mean to have an AI assistant? And how could that have helped you in your own career 10 years ago?
Okay, well, for me personally, I am pretty allergic to admin. Excel spreadsheets bring me out in a rash. So I think that you can waste a lot of time, or rather, you spend a lot of time as a leader having to do. There's aspects of your role that are just laborious for you because we get energy from different ways of working, right? So where AI can be a strategic assistant is those areas of work which drain you, and they're not your areas of strength, right? So you can use it to kind of get rid of the work that you don't naturally gravitate to and then free you up to do the stuff that you enjoy and that you're really, really good at. So if I go back 10 years, 20 years, absolutely being able to kind of crunch through data without having to, do it myself would definitely be an advantage. That is a more tactical one, though. Something that I have helped leaders use AI quite a lot for in most recent kind of months and the last year is in scenario planning, for example. So the hard conversations that you may want to have, you may need to have with the board and with stakeholders, with your team members. We've all got those conversations to have. You could actually use AI to kind of help you prepare for those. Input the considerations, the people, the personalities, the situation, the data that you might need to use, and you can go into those conversations and those meetings a lot more prepared psychologically than if you're kind of walking into a blank slate. So it's areas like that, and I could list quite a lot, but it's areas like that I think can really just help you, free up the time to really concentrate on what you want to be doing, which is spending your time leading.
And it does seem like with AI today, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of unknowns within the fire service. There is, again, the excitement in the unknowns, but definitely some fears. But I know with all that, there is a lot of noise of AI is going to replace you, and AI is going to do everything. And obviously, there are some of these concerns, and that it's absolutely not replacing you, and it absolutely should not be making decisions. We need to continue to create these guardrails. But before we get really deep into them, I'm interested in your thoughts on with all the noise around AI. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that exist today that you hear about people as they are approaching AI within leadership roles?
Yeah, so I think you've touched on some of them. I think there is a lot of fear, the idea that it's coming for all of our jobs. The idea that you could absolutely automate everything is a common misconception, that you can just kind of let the robot roll. But the fact is that without human oversight, and responsible supervision of these models, you cannot just leave it to the models. You have to put the guardrails in place. So that's one of them. Another thing I think people fear is they think it's obviously it is new tech. It is sophisticated tech. It's moving very, very fast. And we're seeing new models and new companies and new software coming at us all the time. And I'm sure everyone who's going to be at the conference has been sold the dream by certain vendors. But the idea is you don't have to be super techy to be able to use these tools. And you certainly don't have to use all of them either. It can be quite overwhelming. So I think there's a need to be able to kind of simplify and like hone down on what's actually going to be useful in your day-to-day role and kind of start small. I think there's another, there's a misconception that it's kind of magic as well. You can just kind of, these things can just produce things on their own. But so that human supervision thing is like super, super important. And, I think there's also the other side that people think there's things that AI can't do, and there's an underestimation of what it can actually do. It's moving very fast. It's getting smarter all the time. So if you had a look at what AI can do today, then you're not planning for kind of what it can be doing next year. So there's getting a balance between kind of seeing, okay, this isn't a magic bullet, but breaking it down into manageable chunks is kind of how I always sit down with people, because otherwise it's like you say, there's so much noise. Everything from this can solve everything to it's going to take everything away from us as humans.
I've heard that phrase of we can do everything, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And so needing to, while it's such a broad perspective and broad scope of what AI can do, you still need to be very intentional and granular about what is the actual outcome you're trying to do, and not just expect it to figure it out, because AI, in the sense, it is only as good as the inputs that you put in.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's a big concern and a challenge within the fire service. And I'm curious now to kind of really weave in the fire service based on your experience of all things AI and leadership. And a lot of it does start with the why, especially when it impacts the organization. What is, within your experience working with the fire service so far, what is the why behind AI, and why is AI something the fire service needs to put a little bit more attention behind, and do a little bit more homework so we can make sure that we're adopting it in the right manner?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the why is looking for where you can find operational efficiencies and spend more time doing what you want to be doing, is leading and ultimately saving lives, right? Engaging with the community, all the stuff which fire chiefs kind of came into the service to do. So often, a good way to start with when you're getting your leadership teams together is to say, what problems are we trying to solve? Where are we inefficient? Where are we spending too much time, sitting in front of a desk instead of out there in the field, or, with our people? And often that's a really good place to start with AI, because you can start to find efficiencies that can, free you up for the stuff you actually want to be doing. I don't know. I've been speaking to quite a few fire chiefs over the last couple of months, as I've been kind of preparing coming up to the conference. And I keep hearing, we didn't come into this to sit behind a desk and be crunching data. And I should say, actually, back to kind of like the fears around AI, that actually that's going to happen. The reality is when you employ AI properly, you should be getting away from your desk and spending a lot less time in front of a screen. It's when you get down those rabbit holes and it's not directed in the right way that it feels like it's taking more time. And you're having to learn a new tech, and that's onerous. But actually, when it's done and employed in a way that's staged, and you have the support, you can actually take a lot of that admin time away.
Which means you can focus more on what you do best, which is, for a lot of people, not crunching numbers and doing Excel
Exactly.
spreadsheets. And I know I've talked with a couple of different firefighter members, of chiefs, captains, lieutenants, and they've talked about how they've used off-the-shelf AI tools like ChatGPT and Copilot to help with looking at call data, to help look at, hey, where's the highest density of calls happening, and why is it happening? And there are some tools that already exist, but being able to do it on your own and taking a file and uploading it and being able to just ask questions. And I think that, to me, is one of the best use cases for AI. I've really kind of being a conversational assistant. You mentioned it's not just like write this paper, which of course time efficiency is great, but this idea of having something that can kind of question you. And I know the way that you prompt, you can have it, you can ask, is this written properly? Or am I thinking in this the right way? Is this too strong? Is this too weak? What are some critiques you could offer? So I'm curious when thinking about, again, just using it as sort of like a third party neutral ish assistant that can kind of just help you maybe see stuff you're not seeing with data sets. I'd love you if you could build on that about kind of how you can use these AI tools as kind of a assistant that can help you see stuff that you maybe wouldn't have seen.
Yeah. So AI is great at recognizing patterns. So, you have all your data, you've got your incident reports, you've got your call logs. Like you say, there's all sorts of data you have to work with. Anything, involving HR or anything like that, compliance, accreditation. There's a lot of kind of data you can put into AI to then, like you say, interrogate, to find trends, to find and also to help you predict, what could happen in future, because you've got obviously past data there. But what I would say is it's the most efficient way of doing that is when you actually train specific custom tools or at least projects on your particular, whether it's your jurisdiction, your county, at whatever level, and you're training it specifically on your data, and you can go back to that over time, and you're not having to go fresh into the, an open AI box every time and kind of fire up the whole brain. You're teaching it on your specific, data, and that's when it's most efficient, it's most energy efficient, it's also a lot easier on you. So training is super important. It's not just about that prompt at the time, but it's about building up tools that you can kind of go back to for specific tasks. If you're, for example, preparing for a meeting and you need to kind of be able to come up with, you know comparative year on year, quarter on quarter data.
And you've mentioned tools a few times now, and I mentioned even today I've used ChatGPT, I've used Copilot. What are some of the tools that you use or you recommend or tools that you're building? And can you tell me any more about these tools that you think are tools that departments and chiefs and leaders need to have in their toolbox?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll go through this, and when I do a little bit of a kind of landscape scoping at the beginning of the talk. But large language models, LLMs, there's quite a few out there now. There's three main ones that I recommend, but I always say start with what you've already got installed. So if you're using Microsoft, then obviously it makes sense to look at Copilot. ChatGPT is the one people know the most. Claude by Anthropic is very good. It's actually used by some US government departments already. It's extremely good at crunching data. So you can have like multi-tab spreadsheets in there, for example, that it can analyze and pick out trends. That's extremely powerful. ChatGPT is probably the best one for working on narratives, exactly the way you're describing. Can we change the tone here? Can we, sense checking kind of what you're putting together? And then, like I say, you can create more bespoke tools where you train the AI on your specific data. So I'm developing a couple of tools, for example, that are utilizing those LLMs as the base, but actually have another layer. So it kind of makes it very user friendly, very much more specific to the fire service. So things like there's a leadership app that I'm building, which has got a briefing generator in there. So quite a few fire chiefs said to me they can spend 3 hours trying to prep for a 5 minute meeting with the mayor, where they're going to be interrogated on, why overtime is up, looking at, resourcing and incident levels and so on, response times. This tool will enable you to put your data in, and within minutes, it will come back with, these are the questions that you're likely to be asked. These are the data points you can speak to. These are some kind of general talking points. It will also generate slides for you and charts. So, if you want to demonstrate it as a bar chart, or if you have to quickly like drum up PowerPoint slides, it will do that for you. And then there's another element that I'm building, which is more of an assistant on leadership decisions and kind of preparing for different kinds of meetings, like staff ones, say difficult conversations I mentioned earlier that everyone tends to have at some point, whether it's letting someone go, whether it's, having to, talk about some HR issue that's, more difficult. I hear a lot, and this is across the board, not just fire chiefs, leaders, it can be very lonely at the top. And actually, sometimes you're walking into scenarios where you just need that bit of prep and that little bit of help. And you don't necessarily have someone to talk to going into that meeting, but actually just walking through it and kind of having a bit of a, scenario, even a practice, can actually relieve a lot of the stress, which obviously is going to impact all parts of what you do in a day.
Thank you for laying that out there. And I mean, granted, as you were talking, I'm just kind of daydreaming a little bit about all these different ways that you can use AI. And it's, again, sometimes it can feel overwhelming. And when you're, especially someone that's maybe a little bit tech adverse, or just someone that is maybe used to the way that they do stuff. I mean, we're all humans in a lot of ways, or creatures of habit, but I think there's many leaders that acknowledge that the external world around us is changing, whether you look at stuff from lithium ion car fires to solar panels to lightweight construction materials to uh, a, a range of different things that have changed in society. Like, the world around us is changing, and we can't just live under a rock and act like nothing's happening. So we need to embrace change. Change is the one absolute, but there's still the, hey, this is the way we've always done it. I don't want to do it. So, how would you approach that or address that with someone that's sort of just reluctant to embrace something new, or is kind of a little adverse to new tech? What's a way to really do this properly in a crawl, walk, run manner?
I use that phrase too, and it's great. It's exactly that. I think one, you don't have to do everything all at once. You know, you absolutely shouldn't. I would say usually find one pain point, one laborious task which is repetitive, something which you don't maybe enjoy, or at least you feel you're spending too much time on, away from the things you want to be spending your time on. And then look at where you are today. So, say, for example, it's about generating a report or prepping for a meeting. How long does it currently take you? What's involved? And then if you're trialing a solution of using AI to, to alleviate some of that task, then see compare, make sure you're looking at, the metrics that are going to move the needle. So often it's time saved. Sometimes it can be accuracy of crunching through data, depending on the pain point that you pick. But ring fence it. I would say have someone else, especially if you're a skeptic or you're nervous about it, have someone else work on it with you. Whether that's an external consultant or just a team member, who's maybe curious about tools. And then just compare and just see whether something moves the needle. It takes you that much less time, and that if you have there should be a little aha moment that happens when it actually works for you, and that builds your confidence up. And then you're able to then start thinking about, okay, how else could I incorporate this? And you could start to look a bit wider, and you can look at starting to scale things. But I would say always start small, but don't just start with the tech and say, I'm going to try this tool. Start with the problem, start with what you wanted to solve for, and clearly measure whether it works for you and how much it works for you. And then that's the crawl. And then you can start going from there.
Good words of wisdom. Thanks, Rebecca. And maybe to kind of finish this out here, what are you excited about for coming to FRI in Orlando this year, 2025?
I'm excited for the whole thing. I've really, really enjoyed kind of getting to start to know this sector over the last kind of number of months. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing from other people, talking, meeting more fire chiefs, understanding a little bit more about the problems that they're tackling every day, and kind of seeing what solutions, can be brought. But I'm super excited. Everyone I've met so far in the service has just been great. And so, yeah, I've worked in business a long, long time, and I've worked with commercial leaders of corporations and still have a couple of clients in that space. But there's something about public service that I'm so attracted to. So I'm genuinely excited about, talking about solutions for something that's so worthwhile. So I do honestly mean that.
Yeah, well said. And a final thing, and I did not prep you for this. Do you have a favorite quote or a word of wisdom that you live by?
I would say you can't outsource human judgment, but you can augment it.
Mic drop. Nothing else needs to be said. Well, I love that. We'll have to ponder on that one a bit more. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for your leadership and willingness to support the fire service. We're excited to have you at FRI in Orlando this August, and look forward to seeing you again when you come back across the pond.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Take care.